भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतां स्वकतः कृष्णपुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदयन्तस्थो ह्यभद्राणि विदुनोति सुहृत्सतां नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवय भगवतिरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 24, Text 71 and 72. योगदेशम् उपासाद्य धारयन्तो मुनिवृताः समाहितः धियः सर्व एतद् अभ्यासतादृतः। योगदेशम् उपासाद्य धारयन्तो मुनिव्रताः समाहितो धियः सर्व एतद् अभ्यासतादृताः। योगदेशम् उपासाद्य धारयन्तो मुनिव्रताः समाहितः धियः सर्व एतद् अभ्यासतादृताः। Synonyms: Yoga Desham, Yoga Adesham, the instruction of the Bhakti Yoga, Upasadhya, constantly reading, Dharayantaha, and taking within the heart, Munivrataha, just take the vow of great sages, the vow of silence, Samahita, always fixed in the mind, Diyaha, with intelligence, Sarve, of all of you, Etat, this, Abhyasata, practice, Adritaha, with great reverence. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. My dear princess, in the form of a prayer, I have delineated the yoga system of chanting the holy name. All of you should take this important stotra within your minds and promise to keep it in order to become great sages. By acting silently like a great sage and by giving attention and reverence, you should practice this method. Purport. In the Hatha Yoga system, one has to practice the bodily exercises, dhyana, dharana, asana, meditation, etc. One also has to sit in one place in a particular posture and concentrate his gaze on the tip of the nose. There are so many rules and regulations for the Hatha Yoga system that it is practically impossible to perform in this age. The alternative system of Bhakti Yoga is very easy, not only in this age, but in others as well. For this yoga system was advocated long ago by Lord Shiva when he advised the princes, the sons of Maharaj Prachina Barhisat. The Bhakti Yoga system is not newly introduced. For even 5,000 years ago, Lord Krishna recommended this Bhakti Yoga as the topmost yoga. As Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita 6:47, Yoginam api sarvesham madgate shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yuktatamo matah. Of all yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. The topmost yogi is he who constantly thinks of Krishna within himself and chants the glories of the Lord. In other words, this system of Bhakti Yoga has been existing from time immemorial and is now continuing in this Krishna consciousness movement. The word Munivrataha is significant in this regard because those who are interested in advancing in spiritual life must be silent. Silence means talking only of Krishna Katha. This is the silence of Maharaj Ambarisha. Savaimanah Krishna Padaravindayor Vachamsi Vaikunta Gunarnavarnane. King Ambarisha always fixed his mind on the lotus feet of the Lord and talked of him only. Bhagavatam 9:4-19. We should also take this opportunity in life to become as good as great saints simply by not talking unnecessarily with unwanted persons. We should either talk of Krishna or chant Hare Krishna undeviatingly. This is called Munivrata. The intelligence must be very sharp, samahita diyaha, and should always be acting in Krishna consciousness. The words etad abhyasa adritaha indicate that if one takes these instructions from a spiritual master with great reverence, adrita, and practices them accordingly, he will find this bhakti yoga process to be very, very easy. Text 72. Idam aha purasmakam bhagavan vivasvrpatihi brigав adinam atmajanam Sisrukshu samshikshitam idam aha purasmakam Bhagavan vivasvarpratihi bhargvadinam atmajanam sisrukshu samshikshitam idam aha purasmakam Bhagavan vivasvrpatihi bhargvadinam atmajanam sisrukshu samshikshatam. Synonyms: Idam, this, Aha, said, Pura, formerly, Asmakam, unto us, Bhagavan, the Lord, Vishwasrik, the creators of universe, Patihi, master, Bhrigu Adinam, of great sages headed by Bhrigu, Atmajanam, of his sons, Sisrukshuhu, desirous of creating, some Sisrikshatam, who are in charge of creation. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. This prayer was first spoken to us by Lord Brahma, the master of all creators. The creators headed by Bhrigu were instructed in these prayers because they wanted to create. Purport. Lord Brahma was created by Lord Vishnu, then Lord Brahma created Lord Shiva and the other great sages headed by Bhrigu Muni. These great sages included Bhrigu, Marichi, Atreya, Vasishta, and others. All these great sages were in charge of creating population. Since there were not many living entities in the beginning, Vishnu entrusted Brahma with the business of creation, and Brahma in his turn, created many hundreds and thousands of demigods and great sages to continue with creation. At the same time, Lord Brahma cautioned all his sons and disciples by reciting the prayer now recited by Lord Shiva. The material creation means material engagement, but material engagements can be counteracted if we always remember our relationship with the Lord, as that relationship is described in these prayers recited by Lord Shiva. In this way, we can remain constantly in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, despite our engagement in the creation, we cannot be deviated from the path of Krishna consciousness. The Krishna consciousness movement is especially meant for this purpose. In this material world, everyone is engaged in some particular occupational duty, which is described in the Varnashrama Dharma. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudras, and everyone are engaged in their occupational duty. But if one remembers his first duty, keeping in constant contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything will be successful. If one simply executes the rules and regulations of the Varnashrama Dharma in the role of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Sudra, and keeps busy and does not remember one's eternal relationship with the Lord, one's business and activities, as well as occupational duties, will simply be a waste of time. This is confirmed in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 1 to 8. Dharmasvanushthitah pumsan vishvaksena katasriyah notpadayeti tiratim shrama eva hi kevalam. The conclusion is that even if one is busy executing his occupational duty, his business in the Krishna consciousness need not be hampered. He has simply to execute the devotional service of Shravanam, Kirtanam, hearing, chanting, and remembering. One need not abandon the occupational duty as stated in Bhagavad Gita 1846. Yata pravrittir bhutanam ena sarvamidam tatam swakarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim bindanti manavaha. By the worship of Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all pervading, man can, in the performance of his own duty, attain perfection. Thus, one can continue with his occupational duty, but if he worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Lord Shiva herein prescribes, he attains his perfection of life. Swanushtitasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam, Bhagavatam 1 to 13. We should continue executing our occupational duties, but if we try to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by our duties, then our lives will be perfected. Prabhupada की जय। नमो ओम विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशधारणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. I humbly bow down to all the assembled Vaishnavas and thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me an opportunity to purify myself. So, in terms of the context, we are in Canto 4, chapter 24. And here we've seen the glorious prayers of Rudra Gita by Lord Shiva, instructing the sons of Prachina Barhi, Prachetas. And towards the end, he's explaining the glories of this chant, and he's also saying, like, you should focus your mind on this particular stotram, and then perfect your life. So I was reading this purport by Srila Prabhupada yesterday night, and and the appreciation and the gratefulness to Srila Prabhupada just went boundless. So if we think about this verse says, if the first verse says, Yoga Desham Upasadya Dharayanto Munivrataha Samahita Diya Sarva Etad Abhyasaradritaha. So it says that if one should perform, if you take the literal translation of this verse by Sanskrit standards, it says Yoga Desham Upasadya, take to the path of yoga and perform your activities and be situated very like how a muni would be and hold dharana, the dharayanto, samahita diya sarva, and make your intelligence constantly steady. And because by this practice, you will be able to perfect yourself. That's what this verse means. But as we know, every verse is only as important as the context. So Srila Prabhupada, when he writes the purport for this verse in translation, he gives a very the exact and as it is explanation of what this verse actually means. So yoga doesn't just mean any form of yoga. So Srila Prabhupada clarifies this as bhakti yoga. So why does Srila Prabhupada do this? Because we read this Rudra Gita, and in the Rudra Gita, Lord Shiva prays. He's very personal in his prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He says, Snigdha pravrid ghanashyamam sarva saundarya sangramam charvayata chaturbahum sujata ruchirananam padmakosha palasaksham sundara brusunasikam Sudvijam Kapolasam Samakarna Vibhushanam. He says that the Lord is not an impersonal concept. The Lord is personal. And the way to achieve the Lord is through the path of bhakti. He says, Snigdha Pravrit Ghanashyamam Sarva Saundarya Sangramam Charvayata Chaturbhavam Sujata Ruchirananam. He says that the Lord's face is so beautiful and so glowing. Sujata Ruchirananam. And Snigdha Pravrit Ghanashyamam. The Lord has a form and he has a color. The form of his body has a color, and the color is that of a Snigdha Pravrit Ghanasham, just like how rain, light, and clouds are so black, that just like that, the Lord's form is really black. Sarva Saundarya Sangramam, Charvayata Chaturbhavam. So he has four hands, and he's actually worshipping the four-handed form of the Lord. Chaturbhavam Shrivat Sang. So it says Sujata Ruchiranam, the Lord's face is completely glowing. And he says, Padma Kosha Palasaksham Sundarabru Sunasikam Sudvijam Sakapolasim Samakarana Vibhushanam. So he glorifies the Lord's nostrils, he glorifies the Lord's forehead. He says everything about the Lord is so personal. And with that context, he says, Atatvam Masino Brahman Paramatman Vipashitan Vishwam Vidvam Bayam Dashta Akutaschit Bhayagatihi. He says the whole world is afraid of Rudra, but the only thing everybody needs to do is worship the Supreme Personality of God. So this is the context or the mood in which the Rudra Gita prayers is sung. And Srila Prabhupada is exemplifying that mood. And he says the yoga adesham is actually meaning that it's actually bhakti yoga process, because any other form of yoga is not applicable to this age. Hatha yoga has like Ashtanga, it's like eight limbs. There are Yama, Niyama, Asana, Dharana, Pratyahara, Pranayama, and Samadhi, and all these different stages. But going through that in this age is not possible. So that's why Srila Prabhupada here says when it's yoga adesham, it's actually bhakti yoga. And Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse from Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yuktatamo mataha. Among all the yogis, one who is constantly thinking of me in his mind, so that person is considered to be the top post. So this is the glory of the Bhakti Yoga process. And so Srila Prabhupada also goes on to explain each verse, each sentence in this verse with this bhakti attitude. He says Munivrataha. Typically, what would Munivrata means? Munivrata means a sage who is taken to the practice of practicing vows. But here he says that that's a bhakti yogi. And how does a bhakti yogi take to the process of Munivrata? It's by keeping silence, and not by completely being silent and not talking, but it's only talking about Krishna Katha, only talking about the glories of Krishna. and not talking about unnecessary worldly stuff, right? So that's what the definition of Munivrata is given by Srila Prabhupada. And he says, he quotes the example of Ambarish Maharaj. So this verse is very glorious, and Ambarish Maharaj is an embodiment of bhakti. So he is the person who completely surrendered, Atmanivedan, and completely surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we know the backstory where he was chased by Sudarshan Chakra, and Ambarish Maharaj completely sat there without even thinking anything, and then he meditated on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we know how the Sudarshan Chakra came and then killed all these asuras who was created by Durvasa Muni. So, and Ambarish Maharaj says, Savaimana Krishna Padara Vindayor Pachamsi Vaikunta Gunarnu Varnani. He says, the mind should be always focused on the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Savaimana Krishna Padara Vindayor Vachamsi Vaikunta Gunanu Varnani. My words should always glorify the greatness of Vaikuntha. So that's the mood of a devotee. So this reminded me of a verse from Mukundamala Stotram. So here Kulashekar Alvar says, जिह्वे कीर्तय केशवं मुररिपुं चेतो भज श्रीधरम् पाणिद्वन्द्वसमर्च्युतकथा श्रोत्रद्वयं त्वं शृणु जिह्रग्राणमुकुन्दपादतुलसीं मूर्धन्यमोक्षोक्षद कृष्णं लोचय लोकनं द्वयहरे गच्छाङ्घ्रियुग्मालयम्. So it says, Jihve Kirtaya Keshavam. O tongue, you should always chant the glories of the Keshava. And Muraripum Cheto Bhaja. O mind, always talk about the glories of Murari, the one who killed the demon Mura. Sridharam Panidvandva Samarchuta. Always, oh, two hands. I have two hands. Those two hands should always be engaged in worshipping the Sridhara. And Samarchuta Kada Shrotra Dvayantam Shrunu. The 2 ears which I have should always be focused on hearing the glorious messages. The Shrotra Dvayam Samshrunu. The both 2 ears should hear only the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Um, Krishnam Lokaya Lochanam Dvaya Harer. So there are two eyes I have, and those eyes should always see the beautiful form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Dvaya Harer Kachangri Yugmalayam. So I have 2 feet, and what those 2 feet should do is like always go to the temple of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and worship him. Jigra Grana Mukunda Pada Tulasi Murdhvan Namo Dokshaja. So my Jigra Grana, and so my nose should always smell the beautiful tulasi leaves which are offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Murdan Namo Dokshaja. My head should always bow to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the epitome of bhakti. So this is how bhakti process needs to be. So if once when Krishna says Yoginam api sarvesham madgaten antaratmana, that means that our activities should represent this mood, and only then our minds will be focused on Krishna. So that's what Srila Prabhupada says. The bhakti yoga process is simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy, right? So fixing the mind on Krishna, as explained by in Bhagavad Gita in multiple places, is the highest stage of bhakti yoga. So for that to happen, it's not easy, and Srila Prabhupada explains the only way to do that is constantly chanting the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And while we chant, remember put all our attention in the chanting process, and by gradual chanting process all the anarthas are cleansed, and then we'll be able to focus our mind on Krishna. So at that point, when we are completely focused on Krishna, then all these qualities which are exemplified here, where Savaimana Krishna Padara Vindayor, those will be naturally exhibited. So that's what Srila Prabhupada says, Adrita, Abhyasa Adrita. You have to take instructions from a spiritual master with great reverence, and by that process you perform the bhakti yoga. So just by looking at this purport by Srila Prabhupada and the way he has explained the glories of bhakti yoga, and even though the verse is not completely explaining the bhakti yoga, Srila Prabhupada is explaining this in the context of bhakti yoga. This reminded me of this verse which we typically chant before any of our anything we do, right? Ajnana-timirandasya jnananjana-shalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we are all in great darkness. The Ajnana-timira-andasya. It's in a very great darkness. And what the Guru does is he takes the brush of knowledge and then opens our eyes, right? That's what Srila Prabhupada has done here for us. He's explaining the glories of the Bhakti Yoga in this context, and then telling us like how one should approach this process of devotional service. So those are some of the points I could gather on this topic. These are really, really very great purports. These two purports, I had only time to convey the messages from the first purport. So I'll encourage everybody to read the second purport and spend our time scrutinizingly reading Srila Prabhupada, because that is the only way we can understand the messages